I won't show myself in this video, but I do want to tell my story. And here's some things that I'm getting to enjoy again. There's my study books for CFA Level 3. There's my computer. There's my lovely cup of coffee. And there is my tree of life. But then there is this, a Bellicon trampoline. And you will understand when I tell my story why this is so significant to me and why all this is so significant to me. So let's put the focus on the tree of life. Because I know life and I know how great it can be. And I've always known how great life can be. Just to give you an idea of my background, my name is Adrian. I am a financial analyst in the Southeast. I do a lot of quantitative analysis. I love statistics. I love finance. I love commercial real estate. I love all those things. But it's taken me a while to get to the point where I am well. Ever since I've been young, and this was not from parental pressure. This was more of a self-inflicted type pressure. I've always been very perfectionistic. And when I look back, I realized that a lot of it had to do with how can I make myself fit in or somehow belong to some kind of group in life. And if you can hear my dog, he might be a little allergic. So if you hear a weird noise and him breathing, it's probably his allergies. But that's a whole other story. But I found it was a way for me to kind of show that I'm worth something. So I was already putting my worth in the wrong place. Fast forward to college, and I'm going into my last year, and the summer before my last year of college, I start feeling depressed. I've already gone through a lot of hypochondria before that, jumping from one illness to another. But finally, I guess I had run out of illnesses to worry about, so I started getting depressed, and I started feeling anxious, and I started having panic attacks 24/7. By October, I was practically not functional. I was still going to class somehow. I was still getting homework done somehow. But it was a nightmare for my family that I was living with. It was a nightmare just for myself. It was a nightmare for everyone. So finally, there had been a psychologist at my church who had told me, you've got some things to work through, but you need to get some sleep. So I did go on a medication that helped me to sleep. Thankfully, I haven't developed a dependence to anything that I'm on. In full disclosure, I am on 2 medications. I have never let it get past that. I will say that I am very fortunate in that the psychologist and the psychiatrist that I have been going to see now for over a decade have always encouraged me to focus on my therapy as opposed to go on more medication or anything like that. So in my opinion, they set me up to understand TMS. After that fall, I got better very quickly. And I honestly, for the first time in my life, did not feel so stressed out all the time. That being said, I still had not gotten to the root of what was going on. And fast forward to 2016, I have what is known as the first quote-unquote relapse in anxiety. OCD is all the same thing. You don't need a label for it. And it occurred at the same time that my grandmother fell, got really sick, had to go into the hospital. I had a very bad migraine with the flashing lights and all that stuff. And my father, who happens to be a psychologist himself, said, as well as one of my best friends that knew me very well, said, this is not an illness. This is, something psychological that's going on with you. I remember, I think later, I got better pretty quickly after going to see my psychologist a few times and just dealing with the fact that, hey, you can make it through this. Just remember, there's nothing wrong with you. I think around late 2016, I actually did look at Dr. Sarno. The reason I looked at Dr. Sarno was because I knew someone else that I was convinced that some of what was going on with him was kind of mental. I've done this video a few times, but this is something I left out and I think it's important. Just every single time he would go back to the tennis court or hit a golf ball or whatever, like all of a sudden the shoulder would be hurt again and the physical therapy thing would start over and over again. And I remember reading about TMS. I don't remember how I first got exposed to the theory of TMS, but it's something I probably read about it on some message board or on Facebook or somewhere like that. So I started looking into it. And I thought, this migraine thing sounds like me. So there's some details that I left out of some initial videos. So I just wanted to do that, to get these things out there and say that TMS wasn't something I discovered all of a sudden in 2019. So background, TMS worked on the migraine. Knowing about TMS, it actually worked on my migraines. It worked on a lot of things, shockingly. So I went through that. And I remember at the time, applying it. I remember telling this guy, hey, do you know anything about TMS? This is what, it suggests, maybe you should read about Dr. Sarno. He kind of laughed at me and poo-pooed it. He was like, yeah, he's like, I do think you shouldn't listen to doctors, but you have to be careful. It's always that thing, be careful, be careful, be careful. And I honestly think that this entire year of COVID has been be careful, be careful, be careful. And a real focus on the medical establishment, which I think is going to take people backwards. It just shows how much trust there is in the medical establishment, and I actually do think that could be a problem. But anyway, fast forward to the fall of 2018, and I failed the level 3 CFA exam, and I really failed it. And because this is where I put my worth, I didn't know it at the time, but subconsciously I wasn't okay with failing that. Forget the fact that I kind of had an idea that I probably did, but for some reason I was holding out hope. Maybe other people, did worse than me. Maybe I'll make the cut. Maybe I'll go across the curve or whatever. And I just got, I overestimated a lot of things, and I got very hopeful, and it just turned out to be a disaster for me. Fast forward a month after I got that result, and all of a sudden I go through a female cycle, and I find myself absolutely on my knees, literally on my knees, because my knees lock up while I'm on the treadmill. I start getting really sick to my stomach. I had made some diet changes, stuff like that. And I thought with the knees, okay, I've just been pushing it too hard lately. I've been on the treadmill, I've been doing something, just pushing it too hard. Well, then my knees felt sore, all that kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden, I started, I just kept worrying about it. I was like, I can't do anything about my knees. They're still sore. I can't wear high heels anymore. I can't do these things. So I gradually go into a deeper and deeper anxiety and depression over this. Well, in late November of that year, I remember Thanksgiving in my aunt's house, and I was just zombied out, so worried. And the reason I was worried was because I had gone, here we go, here comes the doctor, quote unquote doctor, that I really think can do you some harm. Here comes me going to the chiropractor, because I thought, well, my knees are bothering me, maybe something's off with my hips, something like that. Well, I go to him, and instead of just having him look at my skeleton or do whatever adjustment or whatever, he's like, oh, well, we've opened up this new thing. We have a doctor over there that looks at the blood work and all this kind of stuff. Well, I'm worried, terrified about myself. I'm like, okay, sure, I'll do the blood work. I don't know why I did it, to be honest with you. I already knew what my previous blood work had shown. But anyway, he got the blood work back, and he's like, oh my God, you're like borderline Hashimoto's or whatever. You're going to have to go on this like insane diet and stuff. Well, I freaked out and ended up going to my regular doctor, who is all into natural wellness. And he had actually wanted me at one point to do some other kind of therapies to help me, because I think he kind of knew that there was something going on there. And he looked at me and he was like, I don't test for this. He's like, I don't think it's something that needs to be tested for. Like, if this were a real issue, this would be the thing that you would need to look at. But at that point, like, I was so freaked out. And then, I kid you not, I was just laying around, and all of a sudden my toes started moving on their own, and my knee started spasming, my right knee. So, of course, because my great grandfather or uncle or somebody, I forget, had ALS, I thought, oh God, somehow it skipped all these generations and now I have ALS. It's ridiculous. Like, I don't have ALS. But I started freaking out. I finally just got rid of the chiropractor because, like, he kept claiming he could treat this and everything. I thought, that's bullcrap. Like, you can't treat this. But anyway, I ended up at the recommendation of another chiropractor who was frankly like, this has nothing to do with anything to do with what's going with a chiropractic issue. For some reason, I ended up at an orthopedic doctor, and I think it was because he just knew that this guy would say, no, nothing's wrong with your knees or whatever. But he said maybe he can get you to see a neurologist that he knows. So I actually did get in to see a neurologist, and this is by January, okay, that I'm finally getting late January that I finally get to see the neurologist. So I've gone through Christmas. My boss at work is a saint. He knew that I was going through some bad stuff. So, I worked from home a lot at that time before it was popular to work from home. And, I was barely getting by, but I did what I had to do to survive. So here I am in this muck and this mire. I've gone from one thing to another. I'm thinking ALS, MS, who knows, maybe I'll have scleroderma. You can see the hopping around here. You can see that I am TMSing. I have the T-type personality. I am totally TMSing. Okay, so at this point, Christmas has gone by. I've laid on the couch. I've done nothing. My family's frustrated with me because, in their opinion, nothing's wrong with me. I'm just stressed out. This is a manifestation of anxiety. My dad is very much a believer in the TMS thing. My mom is very much a believer in TMS, especially since I showed it to her. But to be honest with you, she had some of the mentality of somebody who would take TMS seriously before I went through any of this. So I ended up at the neurologist's office, and they did all the tests, even though he thought it was likely nothing serious. And I went through all the tests, all these MRIs, EMG, NCV. My dad and my mom actually came with me to when he did the EMG because he knew, I let him know, hey, you can talk to my dad about this. And the reason I wanted him to talk to my dad was because my dad knew that this particular doctor would know that this was an issue. That you can have people manifesting symptoms for mental reasons. So my dad talked to him, and I think they largely agreed after the EMG. It was totally clear, everything, and I did have a follow-up with him, and he said, look, I can't find anything wrong with you. I am going to send you to the movement disorders clinic, but, please, there's nothing to worry about. At this point, I actually started to calm down quite a bit. I still had an appointment with a rheumatologist because of the scleroderma worry, so I had not let that one go yet. So I went to see her. I took a week off to do some appointments. I went to see her, and she was like, no, just go to the movement disorders place. So I ended up probably like 2 weeks later with an appointment with the movement disorders people because somebody had a cancellation, and I got into a great guy, and thankfully there was a fellow there that day, and she said, somebody on fellowship, and she said, I actually saw this in a woman at another university, at another place when I was in residency. And it has a medical code and a medical diagnosis, and it's called painful legs, moving toes, and it's very, very common. It's rare, but where it's common is with women. And there's no treatment for it. You can try some gabapentin or something like that to get rid of the pain. So of course I was like, okay, I'll take some of the gabapentin for the pain. Well, I started getting a lot better. Just from here, I had exhausted my options, but I was still terrified because I was like, how am I going to live with this thing that has no treatment? And interestingly, at the movement disorders place, they actually knew about the pain cycle where, you have this negative thought thing about pain and it reinforces it. So they actually wanted me to see a pain psychologist. Thankfully, I did not have to see a pain psychologist, and she was good with that. I told her, I'm going a different way. I already have a psychologist, he kind of understands that. My dad also understood the cycle of pain. So I have all these people around me looking at me going, there's nothing wrong with you. There's something wrong with you, but this is not it. But I finally decided I'm going to dig back into TMS again. I don't know what made me think of that, but I think it's because at this point I realized, I've gone through all of this and nothing's wrong. So I honestly believe that Jesus led me to find this. I went on to Google and found the TMS wiki, and I saw a lot of people praising Steve. So I went and looked him up. I actually ordered his book before I got in touch with him, The Great Pain Deception. I had read enough of it. I went to his website, saw that he actually does sessions with people. So I signed up for the long session. I think it ended up being 4 or 5 hours as opposed to 3. But I sat on my bed with a roll of toilet paper and I cried. I didn't have a box of Kleenex, so a roll of toilet paper was all I could do. Steve really helped me. He introduced me to a lot of thinkers and a lot of people that had gone through similar situations that I was going through. He could see my type T personality. He could see how hard I was being on myself. And he said, you're in pain, but the thing that really got me was that he told me that he had seen a woman with exactly what I had. But he said this, I don't want you to talk to her. He's like, because I kind of want you to forget about that. I want you to focus on healing. I want you to focus on the fact that this can go away, that this can, or it can at least decrease, so by the end of that call, I had things that I could look at, and I had some thinkers that I could listen to. And I had also recently discovered Anglicanism. And so I was looking into stuff like that. And by the fall, after all of this, later that fall, I actually went to an Anglican church. And it was a place where, it didn't matter if you were single past a certain age, all that kind of stuff. And it renewed my spirit. And it came at a time when my spirit was already being renewed in so many ways, thanks to my session with Steve. One of the things Steve noticed while I was in session with him was that I kept wanting to take down and write down everything he was saying because I didn't want to miss a thing. And he said, Adrian, stop taking notes. Like, you don't need to write down every single thing. I did write down what he told me to write down. Like, if it was the name of somebody like Anita, or somebody like that, I would write those names down. But after that session, I started to take the Great Pain Deception even more seriously. I started to take my healing more seriously. And I believe that about 2 months after that call with him, I actually started trying to challenge myself. Could I run? Could I walk in heels again? Could I do these things? So people at work noticed a huge difference in me and realized that I was a different person. Like, I couldn't even see it as much as they could see it. But it was clear that I was getting my confidence and that I was moving on in spite of this. So the first thing I did is I just said, oh, well, move on. I didn't take any more gabapentin. I actually ended up taking a supplement called alpha lipoic acid, which is amazing for your health. I started looking into more natural things. At this point, I am reaching out to a friend of mine from my old church. I'm reaching out to people. I'm rediscovering my relationship with Jesus. I am discovering that there are ways that I think that are toxic. I'm no longer putting all my value on a test. I'm not putting my value on how many degrees I have. I'm not putting my value on my paycheck. There are times I fall back into that, but I know that it's just TMS, whether it's mental or physical. Later that fall, I start running on the treadmill. I start getting into shape. And I am in church. I am having a wonderful relationship with my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And I'm finally getting to know amazing people who are 100% supportive of me in my journey. I have to give Steve credit for so much because he inspired me to really look within, see in my subconscious, what was going on. And so much of it had to do with perfectionism, and so much of it had to do with where I was putting my worth. When COVID hit, I was probably, at first I was freaked out. But what happened probably about 2 or 3 weeks after all started was I started looking at some things and I started going, this is really not anything for me. I'm not going to stand or sit around and be like really scared of this. I'm not going to sit around and listen to the medical establishment all day long. I'm going to take care of myself the way that I know how to take care of myself. I'm going to keep running. I actually ended up getting that trampoline. Who would have thought that I would have been able to balance on a trampoline and learn to exercise on it? I would have laughed at you. I've been back in the office some, wearing dresses, wearing heels a year later, wearing them to stand up in church. I kneel at church. I do all those things that I would have thought would have been impossible. So I promise you, there is life. Look at this tree of life. There is life on the other side of all this TMS, of all these things that are making you miserable. You can challenge yourself. You can do things that you thought weren't possible. So I just come with you with this a year after this COVID stuff started. It doesn't matter what's going on in the world. You can be at peace and you can live a full, amazing life. And right now, like I showed you at the beginning, there's the computer, there's my study material, there's my trampoline, here's this tree of life. I am living a life of peace. It's not perfect. There are days that I go up and down. But you know what? I can recognize if I'm quote unquote TMSing. And I just think back to Steve and I think back to the things that he told me that day. If you think you have TMS, you probably do have TMS. And I think a lot of people manifest TMS in the United States. So I don't think it's uncommon. I think it's very common. We're people that are constantly searching to feel perfect, be perfect. And perfectionism even in people that don't think they're perfectionistic, I think it's a very common trait in America. So I would just encourage you to pick up The Great Pain Deception. I would encourage you to look at Steve's Wall of Victory on YouTube. And if you need a session with him, I definitely recommend that you take that session. And you know what? You'll move at your own speed, but I promise, keep at it. Remember the things that he tells you to do, and really, truly look at yourself. Today I am in church. I am at work. I have gotten a promotion. I am a better person for going through this. And I have a story to tell, and I'm not shy to tell it. So if you're on the fence, don't be on the fence anymore. Get Steve O's books. Get in touch with him. Do a session. Your life will be better for it. Thank you so much for listening to my testimony, for looking at my tree of life. It's a beautiful, beautiful Saturday afternoon. And if it's beautiful where you are, I hope that you are having a blessed and wonderful day. And I just want to say again, thank you, Steve, for all that you have done. And I know you will always be there as long as you can be there. And I just thank you for all the help that you have provided me with. And I'm going to go ahead and send this video and the other one that got interrupted to Steve. But I would like to show you, hopefully later this week, if it's not raining, a video of me walking in my high heels, just as evidence of like how far that I've come. Thank you so much for listening, and have a blessed and wonderful day.